Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. My name is Catherine Fiore, and I am joined here by Jed Hamill. Jed, how you doing? This is our first podcast of 2023.
I know. Woo! 2023.
Let's go.
All day.
All day. All year.
All year. All year. Yes. I read somewhere that 23 was a magic number for you. Is that right?
It is. So growing up, 23 was always my number with sports, and I always just gravitated to it. Kind of just felt like a lucky number. But also for the Video Garage, we are starting a new promotion called 23 and 23, where if any project that you book with us between now and March 31st, even if the production day is later in spring, you'll receive 23% off the project. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
Yeah. Are you excited to talk a little bit about aspects of video production?
I am. We get to get back into it. We get to share a little bit about what we do on the day to day, and also we get to tackle some bigger questions too about the role of media that we create, but also that is consumed. And I'm looking forward to kind of all that's to come with our upcoming episodes.
I know it's very exciting. It's going to be a hoot, as we said in 1955.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, all day. So yeah, I guess if you don't mind, I'll start off with kind of how we came about with today's theme.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so I've had a number of conversations with family and friends who know that I've worked in video and film for a number of years, but still it's very much like Office Space, where they're like, what would you say that you do? What I found is when I talk to folks, not only is it funny that they're not entirely sure what I do personally, but also it's interesting to find out that there really aren't that many resources or any kind of places for folks to go to know how to hire or how to work with a video production company. Also, like what's their part of it? Like what do they need to bring to the table? What do we bring to the table? What kinds of different companies there are? Like all this stuff that's like, that we live, eat, and breathe every day. Like there's no place for them to go to find that stuff.
There's no playbook. There's no blueprints that's just like, all right, here's the types of production companies and the types of projects that can be worked on, and these are the people. I mean, yeah, there's the internet, but even I, like, getting into the industry, like, it was tough to find things until I actually lived them myself.
Yeah, and of course there's always the internet, like, and you can Google, but like that's the most baseline thing ever. This is the universal sign for Google. And for those of you on the audio podcast, I'm doing like a John Candy in Planes, Trains, Automobiles playing the piano on his front dashboard. But the idea is that, yeah, like there are places to go besides this podcast, and there's a lot of resources out there. It's just that you may not know where to start. So like I guess from my perspective, I would just ask, like, do you in your mind, is there like a breakdown of kind of what kind of companies are out there, and then how kind of the Video Garage kind of fits into that menu of options?
Yeah. And actually, it's so funny because I'm thinking of this example. I was just at a dance class a few days ago, and someone asked me, "Oh, what do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I work in video production." They're like, "So what do you do? What does that look like?" Because everyone just immediately thinks of the big studios, the big movie sets, Warner Brothers, and yes, those are definitely, that is video production.
Or like selfie.
Or like content creators now,
exactly.
whether it be TikTok or YouTube or Vine, rest in peace.
Vine, we love Vine.
Still a class platform.
Yes.
But no, so this is actually very accurate because I was thinking about it just at class a few days ago. And so just to kind of work through some of the different kind of companies that are out there, one that you often see are big agencies. So these will be a lot of time creating communications for companies and organizations. I mean, basically, like, if Nike were in need of content for an ad or a commercial, big agencies can help them craft that. Do you have it? Like, how else would you kind of?
So the way that I look at it is that there are advertising agencies and production companies that are kind of the international or very big companies. Then there are smaller agencies that either do marketing, and then they have either in-house, a one-person band, or they outsource to other, they know somebody.
Like a network of freelancers that they know that they can call, and they've built a relationship with.
Exactly, like as needed, right? So they will do, like, very often they'll be diversified, so they won't just do video. They'll do like your print ads, or build your website, or do your SEO or whatever. And then there are kind of smaller companies that are either, again, marketing companies or video production companies. And very often, not always, but very often, the video production companies they'll just be hired to show up on a Tuesday with their camera.
Yeah.
And that's not always true, because there's certain amount of pre-production that takes place. But basically, there's, for most folks who are in local areas, a company says, I need a videographer on Tuesday to shoot interviews or to shoot this commercial that I've come up with.
Yeah.
And so I think that the thing that I would segue to, or that I think is kind of an interesting topic to talk about, is just not so much that the Video Garage is unique. It's just that there's just not many companies that I know of that are like us. That the way that I look at it is that we are a company that in fact does deal with bigger companies that have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of resources, a lot of needs. We
Yeah.
have companies that are, up and coming, that are legitimate companies that have been around for years but are still growing. And we have other companies who, whether they're big or small, kind of like do what I mentioned before. They just need someone to show up on a Tuesday and to shoot their thing. But generally speaking, what I like about what we do here is that I think we place a premium on understanding what each client needs,
Yeah.
and following through on the process with them in the way that they're looking for. It's not like we follow systems and we follow plans, but the needs of a team of 20 people who are in a multinational conglomeration are different than $1 million startup, or a $10 million manufacturing company. Whatever it is, it's
Yeah.
different. So yeah.
And the key word that I want to pull from that, and I really hooked on, was like the needs. What's the pain point? What's the want? Because when you go into production, you can say you're a video production company, but there are different assets or like areas that you can dive into. There's creative. Maybe you just need help with some like messaging and kind of building your creative and how you want to portray yourself and your brand, your narrative to the world. Then there's the actual production element, like you were saying, someone that your crew that shows up on the production day, they know what they need to capture, they capture it, and then they continue on. Maybe it's just post-production. Maybe you have a library of footage that you've already used and you need help with crafting that into a 2-minute video. So there are many different needs. And like you were saying, the nice part about the Video Garage is that we can address all of those needs through the whole process. And sometimes it's the entire process. We work with clients from that first meeting with creative all the way through to delivery. Other times we will just help clients with just a production day, and they handle the creative and they handle the post. We do what's called a footage handoff. And or it can be a mix of anything. And I think that's why sometimes it's so hard to just like classify it in like one sentence, because there's so many different parts and so many different needs that a production company can help with.
Yeah, so I guess that's true, because I would say that it's, in as much as every client is unique and every project is different, I do think that, and in as much as you can't have a cookie cutter approach, because everybody is unique and every goal that each client has is different, I do feel that there is a pattern or an approach that we take that is the same, right?
Yeah, that we do definitely have like our baseline approach. Yeah.
So can you kind of outline what you think that approach is?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I would say that I like the cookie cutter reference, like our full cookie platter approach. We got the whole cookie jar. Would be everything from project scoping. So having just like the initial idea that we go over in a discovery call, to kind of building that into basically a production plan, through creative, so this would be the pre-production process, where we talk about key messaging and we plan for a production day. We talk about motion graphics, what might that look like? If it's animation, it's doing mood boards. And then we have actual production. So this is when we're on set. And we get to be with our clients. Those are always really fun days, a lot of great stories that come from those, and just a chance to interact with people, especially after this pandemic, which is so nice. And then it goes into post-production. So this is when we really bring everything that we've been working towards over the past couple of weeks all together into whatever deliverables it may be.
Yes, and you nail deliverable, which is hard to say really fast.
Deliverable.
Yes, in a lot of ways. I think what's key to kind of how we approach working with clients, and what I would recommend to anybody in any field, frankly, is, and that's why I like it so much, is that it is a journey, right? So when you say journey, on one hand, I feel like it's like this sprawling, like you're up and down hill and dale.
Yeah, it's like this long-term collaboration process. Like it's truly like a production partner, really, more than anything. It's not this like one and done. I mean,
Yeah.
If that's what you need, yeah, we absolutely can do that. But we like the journey. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
We
So
watch a movie for the journey, not the destination.
so the way that I think about it is that on one hand, when you're on a journey,
Mm,
your initial thought is like, well, there's this kind of like you wonder where it's going to go. But at the same time, when you know, in a real specific way, like when you go on a journey, if you're smart, you plan it, right? You have some plan, right?
yeah,
So I think that's the key.
Jed, I am a planner.
I
Trust me.
know.
I like
Trust you.
that.
I've met you before. I know you're a planner. Yeah, for sure. You have plans for your plans. But I guess what I'm saying is that you know, from my perspective, that kind of illustrates kind of what we do and the importance of customer success is that there's this idea that we know what we're doing, that we have a plan, that we've really thought it all through. However, there is a level of, you know, seeing how things unfold. Because what happens very often, I think, is that people have a very strong idea of what they want, and then perhaps later on in the process, either they'll get a new idea or a new product or a new stakeholder. And so the idea is to find that balance between having a very strict plan of milestones, deadlines, and approaches to how we make everything feel clear and concise and organized and just that we're on top of it, right?
Mm,
But the other piece of that is to kind of understand that as things come up, whether it's like a new stakeholder or a different need that came up or whatever it may be, that there's this understanding that as much as there's control and there's order, it's to enjoy the journey and to adjust as needed as things come up and as as the project progresses.
yeah, and I'm gonna like just very casually plant the seed because that ties into, I know, one of our future episodes where we talk about collaboration and the importance of communication to really equip yourself to go through that journey as things evolve, maybe from where you had potentially started, because that is the process. It's where creativity sometimes often shines, like when you're least expecting it and someone gets an idea, whether they're the director or the PA or the producer or just they brought coffee and it's the client or they're just swinging by to say hi. Creativity comes from everywhere. And so you can always find inspiration to adjust that plan. And honestly, you normally get some cool products from that. So I would love to open this up to kind of a broader conversation if you're okay with that. Because
down.
one thing that we talked about that we, for our block B that we wanted to cover in the podcast was kind of pulling things into focus a little bit, talking about some larger questions. So we talked about some technical pieces. Now, how does this open up to how we consume media or who creates media and what does that mean in our day-to-day lives? And so we were covering the variety of video production companies that there are, like the variety of clients that we might work with, and also the variety of solutions that can be provided. And so we consume a lot of media. It's very diverse in terms of where it comes from, whether it's a big ad agency to a production company. We also talked about if it's, you know, a freelancer that's creating content, or now even just it can be a content creator where it is their profession, or even just someone that picks up their phone, records something from their camera roll, sends it on the internet, and then it goes viral. So like there's a lot of diversity
Yeah.
in what we consume. And so,
Yeah, so I guess as you're saying, yeah, the way that I look at it is this: I do think that we're kind of in this day and age. There's kind of two paths that we're on simultaneously. I think that on one hand, the bigger media conglomerates are getting more and more monolithic. Like there's these big companies that control a lot of different IP, as it were. But at the same time, there are a lot of different kinds of content you can get out there. That's a lot of it's great, and a lot of it is, you know, cutting edge and pushing the boundaries for it, or saying something that's super important. And I think that the thing that's in kind of at the crux of that is not so much like where the content is coming from, but who's getting amplified and who's not.
ooh,
So
yeah.
so the thing that I think about a lot is there was a couple of occasions where in my personal kind of experiences, like through the lens of film and TV as I was growing up, and you know I mentioned this a lot and it comes up in different areas, but you know, it reminds me of like back in the 60s, there was this time where all these movie studios who had, you know, basically provided a vast majority of the entertainment visual contents out there just weren't reaching the younger generations anymore. They weren't
The
reaching
youth.
the youth, right? All the counterculture, as they called it back then. The youths. That's a New Girl reference. But yeah, they weren't reaching the counterculture, the young folk. And so what happened was, is that all these kind of young whippersnappers, like who at the time were like young whippersnappers, who are now kind of these grizzled veterans, but like Spielberg and Scorsese and Lucas and a bunch of others, Brian De Palma, they were all these directors who, first of all, helped each other out, but also basically were these kind of had their finger on the pulse of the youth. And so it's interesting, and this is the long story short, is that because the studios couldn't reach the youth culture, they brought on these at the time young whippersnappers to kind of reach the youth culture. But what happened is it's interesting is that over time, like those same people created tentpole movies, which basically, you know, the tentpole movie is now just like everything's a tentpole movie, where it's all a Marvel movie, or it's reused or reimagined IP that wasn't original. So it's
Yeah.
like the very thing that they were fighting against, they kind of created eventually. And I think that's sort of the cycle that I see a lot, is that you want to have people who know what they're doing, and you want to have high quality content. But I think that what's cool about where we are right now is that the kind of content you can get, there are people who are in different, how do I put it? There are some people who are like doing stuff on TikTok that's like incredibly like dynamic and interesting, and
Oh
there's people who are
yeah.
on YouTube, and people who are doing film, or this is the golden age of TV. So I think it's more just a matter of like, again, like I said, it's like who is mastering the specific platform, and who's being amplified, and who's being I guess whose signal is being boosted as much, because there's a ton of great content out there, but it's not always accessible or found by folks as much as it probably should be.
It's also like the evolution of the platform. I mean, it went from, like you were saying, back in the 50s and 60s, you have these like big, like golden age Hollywood premieres and A-list stars, and we still have that now, but it was very much like this is film
Right.
and you consume it in a theater.
Right.
And then it kind of evolves and you go into like the 70s with your Top Guns and your summer blockbusters, and you have those kind of temples. And so now we have this kind of more wider, we have streaming, we have just TikTok, social media platforms that is variety of content. And like you were saying, there are TikTok creators and YouTube creators who are doing some really fun stuff, and maybe they're the young whippersnappers
Yeah, seriously.
now. But I'm curious about, because you're saying, when they were brought in as they were young, they were given a film, they made some really wonderful stuff that kind of shook things up a little bit, and now they've kind of like fallen back into this temple that we see now with reoccurring IP. So my question is, like, for the youths, I love how we just keep going back to that, but for the youths, like now, how do we create content that is new and fresh, and then 10 years down the line we're not doing that same thing?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe that's just the process. Maybe that's like the evolution of media creation
Yeah, I guess I thought it was myself. We talked about this a little bit. It's like I think that what happens is, um, I don't know. I'm the kind of person who listens to, explores new music, new art, new film, all that type of stuff. And there's nothing wrong if you don't do that, but there's the thing that happens as you get older. You tend to like the stuff that you liked when you were 18 to 22 are basically what you like forever. And I think that that's kind of the thing that I don't know the answer to, but I do think that there's an answer in there, in that, if there's a new and burgeoning media, if there's a new, yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. I didn't want to cut you off though, but like I just kind of had this moment where I was like, oh, it's trying to keep that like fresh eye feel.
Yeah, what it is to appreciate things for as they are, not compare them to what you knew originally.
And like how it related to you, how this previous content related to you. It's just like keeping things just.
Well, I always go to Olivia Rodrigo. Like I heard Driver's License, and I Hope You're Okay, and just on a alien comes down from space and hears that song, I just think that's like I'm getting chills thinking about it. Like it's just like it is it resonates with me, and it's not designed for me, right? Like it's
Ooh, that opens up an interesting question. What designed for you, which we'll dive into on a future podcast.
And I guess that's the thing, is what happens is what most people do is they look at content and they sit there and they say, is that content, does that reflect who I am? And that's not, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you will, because it's important to find something that it meets your identity. But I think that if you look on YouTube, there are some content creators who are doing some crazy good stuff that I wouldn't have seen if not for my 10-year-old nephew. And there's like really good TikTok stuff that I wouldn't see if I hadn't been flipping through Instagram and so they reposted on and that.
Hmm.
And there's like, there's just movies, like just old school movies that like I wouldn't have seen if not for, and this is actually the thing I'll tell you what's cool about the platforms is I find it interesting that I discover more and more music and more art, not because of the algorithm, because someone says, I want to show you something on TikTok.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
very, and it may not TikTok, but the point is like there is because there's so much content, people are able to find their niche. But if you keep your mind open and you find a way to like explore different humans and explore different platforms, then the new ideas come to you. It's just I just think it's hard. I think people really like their formative years, like make them who they are. That forms our
Yeah,
identity.
that's not a bad thing. Like you can keep going back to the music that you listened to in your 20s. Like when I'm with my family and my, whoever it may be, like they'll put on like their classic music that they listened to in their 20s. We'll have a great jam out session. But I think like the piece that we're really diving into is just like remaining like keep focusing on the diversity of content and keep looking at new areas. You can always go back to, the stuff that you really enjoy. It's not
Yeah.
a bad thing,
Well,
but
yeah.
but yeah, that diversity of content and creators and where it's coming from and what it looks like. Just like keep your
Yeah.
head on a swivel.
So, and I think that's the thing I will say is the one piece I want to say here as well is that it goes both ways, and that
I've heard it both ways.
I heard both ways. Slight reference. But no, it's the idea is that like I am not advocating that just if you're keep your head on a swivel if you're an older generation or whatever. I'm talking it both ways that the young folk can look back and understand that all right, oh, so this song was you can see a line between something from the 20s or the 60s or the 90s.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the trick is to have diversity, to have pluralism, right? Is to have a diversity of ideas, not just looking forward, but looking back. So what happens when you look back, you're like, oh, like there's a connection there. And now I understand how we all are connected as people. And that's what art should be. Is art should be it should be a way to express who you are, but it should be a way for you to bring other people and be like into the mix and be like, oh, like we are similar or we're not
Mhm.
similar or whatever it is, but that there's a connection there. And I just think that there's such an easy thing to say, well, you got to stay hip. But no, it's not that. It's staying diverse. It's staying uh what's the word? Being Renaissance, like seeing a bunch of different things and not being attached to one or the other because either A, it's not new or B, it's not old, right?
Mhm.
Like, or C, it's not current. And just real quick, I'll say the thing that I always crack up about is when people are like, oh, like they'll reference something that's like a new song or a new artist.
Yeah.
Wait 2 years, and that person is like not relevant anymore, right? And so the idea is not to be relevant. The idea is to take art as it is and to appreciate it as it is and not be turned off by the idea that it doesn't fit your identity because if it's
Yeah.
good art, it's good art.
Yeah. It's just like not getting stuck on like where it came from or when it came from, whether it was a big agency or a small production company or an indie artist or like the biggest boy band of the world. It's just kind of it's just getting excited about consuming. And honestly, I think for a piece for me, I actually find that hard. I it's very easy for me to just be like, all right, these are my 3 albums. I will rotate them for the next 3 months and I will not listen to my Discover Weekly on Spotify. I will not go look at new movies. This is just like my little sweet spot. So it's hard for me to go
Yeah.
do that. But I think that's always the goal. I think my goal is always to keep, I feel so much better when I find something new and I'm just like, oh, that was so
Or
great.
something even new to you. Like it's
Yeah,
like,
like when you showed me PD.
yeah.
Like I listened to that and I was like, oh yeah, this is great.
It cracks me up. Well, first of all, so PD is he is just so good. He is this.
Explain who is
Yeah,
PD?
so this depends on who you ask. Like, so I discovered PD as a musician, but he's well known as this TikTok artist, and I show it to my friends. I'll show, I'll mention PD to friends, and either there'll be people who aren't on TikTok or aren't on social media as much as, and like, oh, what great music, and then I'll show it to people who are on TikTok. Oh, I know that guy. I see him on TikTok all the time, and you wouldn't think they're the same person. And I think that's the thing is like that's an example of a bunch of people consuming art and taking what they want and what they need from it as opposed to feeling like whether or not it's for them or for not. And I always say
Mhm.
it's like heartache is universal, and joy is universal,
Mhm.
and wanting to feel connected or not feeling connected and or wanting to not feel connected, like whatever those the push and pull, like all those things, those themes, those things that make art great are pretty universal in a lot of ways. It's just it's the CSS, it's the sugar coating, it's the thing. So PD, for me, the music is just it just speaks to me in a lot of ways. The lyrics speak to me in so many ways, and his videos are hilarious. But that's not where I come to the table. It's not the videos; it's for the music. And when I showed it to you, or played it for you, I've been trying to get you to listen to PD for like a year.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
the stars aligned when you showed me. I was
Yeah.
like, the lyrics just work right now.
That's the thing, is that it works right there for you because you're open to it, right?
Yeah.
Like
You have to be open to it.
Yeah,
I think if we
exactly.
were to pull everything kind of that we've been talking about just into focus and try to like, if we were to bottle it up as much as we possibly can, I think it would be open to it, that the diversity of art and voices and content that you consume is key. It's also really fun.
Yeah.
And you can honestly find new communities that way. I mean, we talk about trying to connect like post the pandemic and find what you're interested in and who are those people in those space. That's a great way to do it. And I mean, is there anything else that you
Yeah, I
want
guess
to it?
I would say just bringing it back to not to put a button on it, but just to bring it back to the idea of what we talked about originally, is that I think that whether it's music, art, brand, like your topic, I mean, sorry, the topic of your podcast, or if
The
you
product you're trying to
the
sell,
product. So
or
yeah, and I think that there's the lesson in all of it is that if you have a product, service, message, belief that you really believe in,
Mm.
that you live, eat, and breathe, and you need to get out there, then the question you need to ask yourself is, how much do you believe in it? And to stay open to this idea that um, that doing a good marketing video is similar to art, in that you really want to make sure that you put whatever's inside of you that you really care about authentically on the page, on the screen, and let your audience bring what they're going to bring to the table. When I think about art, like when I think about when I create something,
Mm.
it's kind of like, I'm going like this. Like it's like you have this idea or this message or this product or this whatever it is, this thing you want to share with the universe that you think is going to help it or going to make a difference. You have to reach inside yourself and put it out in the universe and make
And let it be.
let it be. And I think that's easier said than done. I think from a perspective of art and promoting your brand or your product, is like you have to come from a position of this is something that I truly believe. This is something that I am authentically, clearly, and
You're dedicating your time
strongly
to.
strongly
Yeah.
believing, and that you have to also be clear about what your goals are, about what the reason is you want it out, why you want it out there, and how you want to reach people. But basically, the bottom line is that if you know your product and you know why it, or the service or message, if you know why it matters to you and how it could help, then you need to make sure that you take time, energy, and effort, and to create an environment where you have collaborators who can take all that energy and all that belief and all that and all that kind of passion you have for your product, service, or art, and to put it out in the world in such a way that it's clear, concise, that it resonates with audiences. Because honestly, again, if you have something that really matters to you and you are able to communicate it in a way that resonates with other folks, then like the sky's the limit.
And I think we just really hope that we get to be those collaborators on that journey for any business or whatever someone's making, because that's really fun. Because then we just get this invitation to just create.
Yeah, because you get to help people. You get to help people realize their vision. We get to help people take that idea and make it something that's real and not practical, I guess, but like that has practical applications.
Yeah, they
to
can be
ch-
sent out in the world.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and change it.
On the TikTok and
Yeah.
the YouTube
On the
and the
YouTube.
LinkedIn and Facebook or TV, whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
or whatever the future
Yeah.
may be.
But I really loved the conversations that we covered today, and it's so funny as we were going through, I was like pulling pieces. I was like, oh, we're gonna cover this in another episode. Oh, we're gonna take this
Yeah.
seed and we're gonna be able to touch upon this. Like we have a running joke in the office. What is art?
What is
Isn't that
Yeah.
big question? question, so maybe we'll tackle that on a future day. But thank you so much for chatting. I always appreciate it. I
Me
mean,
too.
Jed and I have these talks pretty much like whenever
Yeah.
like we drive home from work, we'll just call each other on the phone and just chat about stuff like this. So it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to kind of share it.
Absolutely, because again, we're telling our authentic stories and putting it out in the world, and hope that people find it positive and helpful, and we believe them, and we on that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be back online with a new episode soon.
All right, thanks again.
Thanks.